When Hurricane Katrina hit the Mississippi Gulf Coast, I was 400 miles to the north. I bought some peanut butter and a little radio that could work on batteries, because we realized this was a serious event. Usually 400 miles away, the hurricane would not impact us. But by 6 o'clock the following evening, my linden tree was down. By 8 o'clock, my pecan tree was down, and I had lost my phone and my electricity. So it was a while before I could go down to the Gulf of Mexico, where I had been going all my life. My mother was from that area, and she and my father dated down there. My grandparents were from there. So it was an important area to me, and I remember my first vacation there when I had to ask my parents what was a Gulf and what was Mexico. And as they explained that, I began to understand that I needed to see these things. I needed to understand these things. As I looked around when I went down there with my camera, the things that I had loved were all gone. Many of the houses down there facing the Gulf were built by people in the 19th century from Chicago. And in fact, Sullivan and Wright built cottages down there. So those beautiful things were gone, and even the common things, the restaurants and the motels, were gone. I began to think about, after a day there, my memory is actually based on photography, and if you ask me something, it really comes from a contact sheet. So I was looking at various buildings, like there would be steps. There would be no house there. It reminded me of Oaxaca, the steppes in the desert. I saw a Baptist church. The pediment was there. The columns were there. The sanctuary was blown away. It reminded me of a temple to Aphrodite in Turkey. I saw a house, the only house standing in Waveland, Mississippi, which was made out of steel girders, the only reason it survived. It had a little cupola on top, and it reminded me of a Hindu temple in Rajasthan that had fallen into ruin. So eventually I saw this house, which still had the tile roof, which had fallen pretty much intact as the bottom 2 stories collapsed. And I eventually was asked to do an exhibit. I began to pair these things up and asked to do an exhibit about these ruins. And so the other images were already paired up in my mind and with photographs that I'd done. But this one, I had never been to Japan. So I went to Japan for the first time in my life to find a photograph rather than just to respond to a culture. Unfortunately, I went to Kyoto, which is a wonderfully kept up city. I'm sure a lot of you have been there. It's just immaculate. So there were no ruins. And I heard about a fire at a temple complex at Daigoji. So I went to that temple. It was a lightning strike. They wouldn't let me see this temple. So I followed a path, a side path down, and found this little monk's house here that had been abandoned. So I felt like I had my companion piece for this series I was working on. I did a couple of things that were different from other pieces in the series. One, I decided to think a lot about the Japanese woodblock, which I'm very interested in, especially Yoshitoshi's aspect of the moon. So I decided to use moonlight to convert these pieces from daylight to night, or at least dusk. And also decided to introduce this cartouche here, which is common in the Japanese woodblock. So I have some woodblock prints where women are writing calligraphy, and the cartouche are images of towns. So why are they there? I don't know. But they're perhaps nostalgic, or perhaps the woman is thinking about someone in that town, or she's from that town. So I decided to introduce these cartouches of things that survived. This lighthouse is actually on the license plate of the Mississippi license if you ever go down there. It's a 19th century lighthouse built out of iron, and it has survived all the hurricanes. This is the second tallest pagoda in Japan. It's 800 years old. It survived all the fires and lightning strikes. And so I've embedded these surviving things in these ruins. Thank you.
Any questions for Randy?
Are those all individual photographs?
They are. They're on, this is old school photography. This is photography paper and darkroom. I'm not working this way so much just because this paper is no longer made. But each one, these are all photographs of Pass Christian and Bay St. Louis and Waveland, Mississippi. And these are all photographs of Dagoji in Japan, outside Kyoto.
Why did you decide to pair things?
Why did I? Well, it goes back a ways. I've been doing it a long time, but there was a thing that was happening in the late 18th century in England called the pendant. And several years ago, I began to be interested in the pendant. And the pendant in that period meant a companion. So I like this idea that you would have a townhouse and a country house. You would have companion paintings, and they weren't really in proximity to one another. These are in proximity, but it actually it's a hard thing to do because it puts pressure on me to make two paintings equally as good, and I don't know that I always succeed. But I do think it introduces things for the viewer to think about. Did I paint them at the same time? The two paintings? I did. Oh, wait. I paint them the way I paint. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question correctly, but I put a wash over the painting, over the photographs. So and even when I'm printing the photograph, like you'll see, there's no image behind here. That's because I knew that's where I wanted the moon to be. So I knew where the lightest spot in the painting was supposed to be. And then I made the photographs continually darker as they receded. Even before I started painting, this is how I laid it out. And then I paint washes of very light, sort of yellow in the center, and then more blue-green as I move away. And then each day I come back to the painting and elaborate on it. So I'm painting on both paintings at the same time with the same colors. Yes?
How did you make the connection from the ruins of Katrina to Japan? I mean, what made you see that and decide you to hop a plane there?
Well, I had never been to Japan. So in the other paintings that I did, I was making connections to Rajasthan and Turkey and various places. Those paintings I used the sort of the Orientalists, the 19th century, when the British and the French artists followed their armies into Egypt and India. They used these brightly colored exotic palettes, and the other, but this just didn't seem to fit. And I had never been to Japan, so, but I saw this wonderful home. It's such a curiosity. I don't know if you've noticed, but whenever you go to the coast, any coast, it could be the Pacific coast or any coast, there is sort of an eccentricity that starts happening as you get to the water, and people build their dream home. And it could be, I've seen some very strange homes because this is it for them. This is what they want to do. It may look Italian. In this case, it was somebody wanted to build a Japanese home on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. It made no sense to me, but I thought it was extraordinary.